You think the biggest blow to the US economy will come from some distant force. Maybe you should take another look at your once closest neighbor, Canada.
Yes.
American businesses?
100%.
Have you recently been focused on buying Canadian from Canadian stores?
100%.
Millions of Canadians are rejecting American consumer symbols, causing US corporate giants to falter step by step. Walmart once called Canada the gold mine of the North. Now it's closing stores en masse. KFC used to be every family's dinner. Now it's deemed too American to eat. If even Canada, once in love with everything labeled Made in USA, turns its back, then Americans must ask, what have we lost? Watch Top 5 American retail chains crumbling under Canada's boycott wave to find the answer and see how the Canadian backlash is affecting your own life. Note that this information is compiled from statistical data and is not intended to defame any organization or individual. Number 1. Walmart. No one expected the world's largest retailer to stumble not because of a global financial crisis, but because of the quiet withdrawal of its closest neighbor, Canada. No protests, no whistles, just emptying parking lots on weekends, missing customers. This is the scene at numerous Walmart Canada stores, and it all began with something seemingly distant, a new tax policy announced in our country at the start of 2025. Walmart was one of the few American brands warmly embraced by Canadians. When it entered the market in 1994, Walmart acquired the entire Woolco chain with over 120 stores spread across provinces. In under 3 years, it became the top choice for Canada's working class. Not flashy, not premium Walmart, simply helped millions live frugally without feeling poor. But the winds have shifted. In May, Washington announced a series of trade policy adjustments, including tax increases on imported goods from countries like Canada and China. This disrupted Walmart's supply chain, which relies heavily on low-cost global sourcing. Deliveries slowed, prices rose, and shoppers no longer felt they were getting a good deal. According to the market analytics group Canadian Food Pricing Watch, in May and June alone, prices of staples like milk, canned meat, and household goods spiked. Specifically, the price of bananas at Walmart Canada rose by about a quarter from the previous month, canned meat went up nearly a third, and milk climbed about a fifth. These were no longer minor changes consumers could overlook. From initial irritation, shopping habits began to shift. The response wasn't anger, but silence. They left and didn't return. A survey published on June 6, 2025 by the Retail Federation of Canada revealed that 7 out of 10 Canadian shoppers had switched to local chains like Loblaws Metro or No Frills. Some stores even posted signs reading American goods price includes import tax. It wasn't just information, it was a subtle reminder you have a choice. The impact wasn't limited to shoppers. Walmart Canada employees themselves began to feel caught in the middle. The public's attitude toward workers with the same nationality changed. Walmart staff were met with less friendly looks. Morale among those caught in a bind began to crumble, but they couldn't quit. Rent contracts still had to be paid. Walmart's financial situation in Canada quickly deteriorated. According to CBC Walmart, Canada's Q2 2025 revenue was the lowest in 9 years. At least 38 stores, mostly near the US border, are under review for closure or downsizing. The ripple effects reached the US distribution centers in Michigan and New York, which serve the Canadian market, have cut thousands of labor hours, affecting roughly 3,000 employees. When Walmart officially announced a revision of its North American revenue forecast, its stock plummeted nearly 7% within days, according to Bloomberg MarketWatch. Several major investment funds began reducing their Walmart holdings, citing signs of declining consumer trust in a developed market. At the same time, local Canadian chains were not just retaining consumers, they were expanding. Loblaws announced plans to open 3 new distribution centers in Ontario. Canadian Tire, an old retail name, shifted nearly a fifth of its supply sourcing from the US to Europe. Meanwhile, Amazon.ca saw US customer orders rise over 30% in a month, most destined for relatives' addresses in Canada. This situation has even backfired on the U.S. residents of Vermont, Michigan, and Buffalo, who once crossed into Canada for cheap Walmart deals, now buy domestically but pay more. A study from the U.S. Grocery Index report showed that in June 2025, consumers in these areas were spending $30 to $50 more per week for the same basket of goods. Many have turned to farmers markets, small warehouses, or online shopping, things they rarely needed before. All of this leads to a bigger question: if Canadians' longtime trade partners, peaceful and steady, are willing to turn their backs on an American consumer icon like Walmart. What happens when other markets start to question it too? On social media groups in Germany, France, and Japan, discussions about the cost of American goods have started to appear. No one claims a boycott wave is spreading, but clearly people are watching. In Canada, emotions are mixed. Many admit no one wanted Walmart to struggle, yet others feel it's delayed justice. A local retailer in Nova Scotia wrote on Reddit, "When Walmart came, I had to close shop after 3 years. Now I see people return to farmers markets, small stores, and I feel somewhat relieved. Walmart, once seen as a symbol of stability, friendliness, and affordability, is now at risk of losing that image, not because the products got worse, but because trust is fading day by day." And more worryingly, Walmart isn't alone. Number 2, Walgreens. Among all the American chains being turned away in Canada, perhaps few would think of Walgreens. Food can be replaced with other dishes. Clothes can be bought elsewhere, but medicine health seems like the one thing no one would risk over personal emotions. And yet in 2025, even pharmaceuticals are not immune to the wave of cold shoulders. Walgreens used to be part of the community's daily life. In many small towns in Ontario and British Columbia, they weren't just a place to buy medicine. They were like unofficial health stations. It was the place a young mother could stop by at 11 p.m. to get fever medication for her child without an appointment. Walgreens promised to always accompany you on your healthcare journey, and they used to do that very well. But then that trust began to crack. In May and June 2025, a wave of Canadian customers discovered that medicines they used to buy at Walgreens had increased in price. Insulin became nearly 20% more expensive in just 3 weeks. Blood pressure and antibiotic medications also saw slight increases enough to make low-income individuals hesitate every time they visited a pharmacy. According to data from the Canadian Pharmaceutical Consumers Association, the cause was said to be new tax policies from their neighboring country, which significantly drove up import and operational costs. The hashtag #NoMoreScripts began appearing on social media as a collective sigh from thousands who felt they had no other choice but to travel farther just to get their medication. According to an internal report from Walgreens Canada shared on the specialist site Health Retail Weekly, within just 7 weeks, 24 branches in Ontario and British Columbia had shut down due to a cost-traffic imbalance. This forced residents in once pharmacy-accessible areas to drive an extra 20-30 minutes, or in some places find no pharmacy within a 15-mile radius, creating true pharmacy deserts. A term once used to describe poor areas without supermarkets now applies to medication. The impact wasn't confined to Canada. Tens of thousands of elderly Americans living near the border from Vermont to Michigan, who used to travel to Canada every month to get cheaper prescriptions, now face a barrier no one saw coming. Since mid-May, Walgreens Canada began rejecting certain types of U.S. Medicare insurance cards. Some Canadian provinces are also said to have issued recommendations to limit fulfillment of cross-border prescriptions to protect domestic supply chains. South of the border, the situation isn't any brighter. An internal report from Walgreens USA showed that the import cost of insulin rose by nearly double digits in May due to raw material taxes and supply disruptions from Asia. Simultaneously, the number of delayed prescriptions increased by over 30%. Medicare coverage remained unchanged, forcing millions of elderly Americans to pay more out of pocket. Meanwhile, border area branches are being automated, gradually replacing consultants with kiosks and screens. No one asks whether you should take the medicine before or after a meal anymore. You're left with on-screen instructions. consumer sentiment is shifting from disappointment to skepticism, from skepticism to withdrawal. New surveys from the North American Consumer Trust Monitoring Center show that satisfaction with Walgreens services in border regions has dropped steadily for 3 consecutive months. Not because the medications were ineffective, but because no one feels cared for anymore. And then a larger question emerges. If even pharmacies associated with safety, compassion, and privacy are vulnerable to political and trade currents, what's left untouched? When the value of community care is replaced by automation and market pricing, people no longer see Walgreens as a healthcare companion, but as a business no different from a supermarket. And if that's the case, they'll go somewhere else. No one is claiming that Walgreens has collapsed, but signs like pharmacy deserts, soaring drug prices, and shaken trust are cracks that cannot be ignored. And what makes it even more heartbreaking is the silence of the elderly. They don't go online to complain, they don't write hashtags, they just quietly switch pharmacies. And with every such move, a bit more trust in the system fades away. Number 3, Target. Some brands bounce back from failure and are welcomed like a long-lost relative, but there are names which even with a new face still bring back what hasn't been forgiven. Target falls into the latter case. In November 2024, Target returned to Canada after nearly a decade of absence this time, with the Target Mini model, small, minimalist, tidy stores located in community shopping centers. They launched a major promotional campaign on both sides of the border using the slogan, "Same quality, better experience." Target is back. In the US, many saw it as a smart move, but in Canada, the sentiment was different. On social media, many expressed feeling like they were being made to forget everything. Back in 2015, Target had opened over 130 stores in Canada, only to abruptly shut them all down in less than 2 years. At that time, thousands lost their jobs, small suppliers were left with unpaid invoices, and customers felt abandoned. It wasn't a failure of the business model, it was a wound that had never been apologized for. This time, Target offered no apology. No message of reconciliation, no mention of the past. Just a reappearance as if no cracks had ever existed. That left a portion of Canadian consumers feeling alienated. A TikTok video showing a nearly empty Target mini store in Brampton at midday went viral. And market data suggests the apathy isn't just emotional. According to Retail Insider Canada, as of June 2025, out of the 17 Target mini stores reopened, 9 were performing below expectations with revenue nearly half of the target. The parent company in the US had to inject millions to keep stores open, even though they had previously stated they wouldn't make long-term investments without sustainable results. Target's story isn't just about business, it's a test of consumer memory. Canadians didn't turn away because of high prices, in fact, after several rounds of trade tariffs. Most US imports had already become more expensive. They turned away because the brand returned without understanding how it had left. Notably, this caution is beginning to spread to the US. In Minnesota, where Target's headquarters is located, older consumer groups have started discussing the comeback campaign in Canada. A post on a retiree forum asked a poignant question. If Canadians don't forgive, should we rethink our trust too? Of course, not everyone turned their backs. Some Target mini locations still operate well, even successfully, but the feeling that the brand isn't being genuine lingers in many conversations. What's notable is that unlike other retail chains, Target was once seen as a symbol of smart consumption, where middle-class customers found better quality than Walmart at more affordable prices than Macy's. Losing that image not because of product failure, but because of conduct leaves many feeling regretful. The bigger question is, do Canadians still need Target? The answer might be, not as much as before. Loblaw's Giant Tiger, Canadian Tire, and other local chains still exist, and some are thriving thanks to the buy local movement amid trade tensions. Target returned with pride. But the market has changed, and consumers do not forget the past, especially when it was never acknowledged. From another perspective, Target may have underestimated something many American brands discover when stepping outside the country. International consumers don't just buy products, they buy values, attitude, and how a brand communicates with them. And when a brand returns but says nothing, sometimes its silence says it all. Target may get through this period. They have the budget, the experience, the ability to adapt. But just like a scar, though healed, still leaves a mark, people will always remember the first time they were left behind. And now guess which name sits at the end of today's list. A brand that when Canadians chose to walk away, didn't just lose revenue, but lost the chance to redefine trust in a new era. Number 4, Costco. We've seen Canadians grow indifferent to Walmart witnessed empty KFC stores as if crispy chicken had lost its flavor. And now it's Costco's turn. Once hailed as the fortress of savings, it has now become a maze of rising prices, endless receipts, and shopping carts full of goods but emptied of trust. There was a time when Costco was beloved not just as a place to shop, but as a shared way to save. Families flocked there on weekends. Children darted between the aisles. Seniors paused at the free sample counters, and familiar conversations echoed among middle-class consumers. But today, in many parts of Canada, Costco is quietly fading, not due to bans or lawsuits, but because trust is slowly slipping away. In June 2025, Linda, 62, living in Buffalo, made her routine shopping trip to St. Catharines, Ontario. She still went with her husband, still chose Costco, still looked for familiar items. But this time at the checkout, the receipt read $417. No beef, no coffee, no powdered milk, just essentials and a few kitchen supplies. She looked at her husband, exhaled, and softly said, "Costco isn't a place for people like us anymore." That line, which might seem like a personal sigh, is actually being echoed by millions of Canadians in different ways. According to a May 2025 Retail Insider report, Costco's revenue in Canada dropped nearly 19%, the lowest in 8 years. 8 warehouses closed in just 5 months, mostly in areas with high numbers of seniors and working-class residents. An independent survey of over 2,000 Canadian consumers revealed that nearly 42% of former loyal Costco shoppers have switched to domestic chains like No Frills Loblaws or nearby local stores. The reason: continuous price hikes, shortages of essential goods, and a sense that the environment isn't as friendly as it used to be. What's notable is that this turning away didn't happen because of a media backlash, but due to a quiet shift in consumer psychology, as people begin to ask themselves, who are we saving for prices of many staple goods at Costco? Surge from the start of Q2 eggs rose more than 20%, frozen meats, nearly 30%, powdered milk over 30%, and toilet paper, one of Costco's signature items, almost doubled in price, due to a shortage of wood pulp imports from North America. According to Nielsen Canada data, the primary cause is the impact of new tariff chains making imported goods more expensive and scarce in Canada.
At this point, we are paying more and getting less for every damn thing.
If Target failed because it couldn't fit in, then Costco is losing trust from the very people who once loved it most. They're not angry, not protesting, they simply stop coming. What makes Costco's decline especially noteworthy is that it's not just happening in Canada. The number of Canadian customers regularly crossing into the US to shop, especially at border-near Costco stores like Buffalo, Detroit, and Vermont, has dropped by over 60% in just 2 months. This doesn't just affect revenue, but also disrupts the domestic supply chain. Inventory from Canada is being pushed back into the US, putting pressure on already crowded warehouses. The average cart value in the US rose 18%, according to data from Costco US Business Unit, in Q2 alone. For Americans especially, the older middle-class Costco was once a shield against inflation. They bought in bulk, paid less, stocked up to brace against price swings, and felt in control of their lives. But now that feeling is fading. Another reason consumers are pulling away is automation. Since early 2025, Costco Canada began piloting a 100% self-checkout model at over 20 locations. No more cashiers, no greetings, no thank you from behind the counter. Just screens, barcodes, and the cold prompt. Please scan your next item. For younger people, this might be convenient, but for the elderly, the disabled, or anyone unfamiliar with tech, it feels like being pushed out. Ironically, while cutting staff, Costco's quarterly financial report still showed a slight profit increase, largely thanks to streamlining operations and labor costs. But profit cannot measure the loss of connection between a brand and the community that once built it. Costco is not Target. It never pulled out, never failed in Canada before. It was the once close friend. And that's why when people walk away from Costco, the feeling isn't anger, it's regret. Costco used to be a fortress not just of low prices, but of a lifestyle that valued planning, unity, and frugality. But that fortress is becoming hollow, and once trust is shaken, even if the sign still lights up, the inside may already be cold. Number 5, KFC. You might be surprised to see KFC, a fast food chain, appear on this list. But don't forget, the fast food industry is also part of the modern retail network, where transactions take place daily between brand and consumer. And just like Walmart or Target, KFC doesn't just sell products, they sell experiences, memories, and even cultural symbols. In the fast food world, McDonald's was once the first scrutinized name when Canadian consumers began rethinking their Americanized dining habits. But surprisingly, not just McDonald's, KFC too, once a symbol of family dinners and warm sharing, is no longer immune. The turning away didn't come through protests or angry statements. It came quietly through empty seats in food courts, unsold buckets of chicken, and once regular customers now walking past as if the brand was never part of their memory. The spark was an advertisement released in late April 2025 titled American Chicken, International Flavor. The slogan, intended to emphasize global quality, was met with sharp criticism in Canada. At a time when the two neighboring nations were at odds, the message felt tone deaf. Hashtags like "Chuck or no more buckets" and "Chuck not my chicken" spread rapidly, not just expressing disappointment, but calling for action. The revenue impact was clear. According to a Yum Brands report on June 3rd, KFC Canada saw a significant year-over-year decline, Quebec dropping the most, followed by Ontario. An internal report shared with media revealed that nearly 20 branches are under consideration for closure next quarter, mostly in border areas that once bustled with US-Canada foot traffic. This rejection wasn't just about price or flavor. It stemmed from a sense of being overwhelmed by foreign culture, a sentiment increasingly common as Canadians seek to assert their identity, especially through food. They don't just want good meals, they want meals that belong to them. So local brands like Mary Brown's made a comeback with Newfoundland-style crispy chicken tailored to Canadian taste. Tim Hortons, already a national symbol, has expanded its hot food menu to compete directly with American fast food. The change in daily consumer behavior is noticeable. At a suburban Toronto mall, a young father approached the KFC counter with his 2 kids, then changed direction. "Let's get Mary Brown's today. Canadian chicken." The words were light but full of intent. No explanation, no argument needed. KFC, once seen as a national culinary icon, is now a name associated with disconnection. Notably, this isn't the first time. Over the years, KFC used to be a refuge for the homeless on freezing nights. In working-class neighborhoods, it was a place where the poor could get a warm dinner at low cost. But now the price of a standard chicken bucket exceeds $20, a figure that makes many middle-aged, retired, and low-income customers feel left behind. And those hit first aren't shareholders or CEOs, but employees. In Ottawa, 3 out of 5 KFC branch staff were Filipino immigrants recently settled. They had their hours cut, then lost their jobs as foot traffic dropped for 3 consecutive weeks. In Toronto, an American cook on a work visa had their contract terminated and couldn't renew it as the visa was brand specific. Meanwhile, the impact has crossed the US border. Branches in Buffalo and Vermont, once thriving on Canadian weekend visitors, reported revenue drops of 20 to 30% just in May and early June. Chicken suppliers in Georgia and Arkansas, where KFC sources most of its ingredients, have started seeing order reductions. Americans are feeling the shift differently. They're asking not, why is KFC losing sales, but what happened to our country's image? A brand that once represented togetherness and the warmth of family meals now symbolizes distance and suspicion. If Walmart was rejected for no longer representing thrift, KFC is losing ground for no longer delivering a sense of belonging. And once Canadians start walking away because they no longer see themselves in an American brand, Americans must confront a hard question. Does American cultural imagery, once carried by every crispy bite, every fast food box, still have a place in other countries? The question doesn't stop at restaurants, because when even a food item is deemed too American to accept, what about more personal things like medicine and pharmaceuticals? Things that touch trust and health, can they still be relied on? From fast food to pharmaceuticals, from department stores to wholesale supermarkets, a wave of coolness toward American goods is quietly spreading in Canada. It isn't loud, it's not a protest, there are no slogans. But it's more effective than any statement. Consumers simply stop showing up. And the 5 names in today's video, Walmart, KFC, Walgreens, Target, and Costco, may just be the first tip of the iceberg. This turning away isn't just from Canadians, it's disrupting supply chains and making Americans, especially middle-aged and older, start to feel that everything around them is no longer the same. Have you noticed familiar stores growing empty grocery bills ticking up by tens of dollars each week? Goods running scarce, and the smile behind the counter slowly disappearing. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next update. Please note that the analyses in this video are based on current data and independent perspectives, not intended as definitive predictions of the future. We hope this information helps the community reflect and take timely action.